They said it couldn't happen. They said she'd keep it together. But when the final buzzer sounded and the Sparks walked off celebrating, head coach Stephanie White snapped live on national television, delivering 5 words that sent shockwaves through the WNBA: "We should have won." Emotions ran high as fans watched in disbelief, mouths agape at a scene few expected in a post-game press conference. Rumors have swirled that these weren't just empty accusations, but the tip of an iceberg of behind-the-scenes drama, whispers of biased officiating, phantom fouls, and a brewing feud between White and the league office. In this world where every call can change a career, Stephanie's outburst has ignited a firestorm. Fans are shocked, analysts are scrambling for answers. Even her own players are said to be divided over whether to back their coach or stay silent. From locker room tensions to explosive text message leaks, we're uncovering the whispers that nobody wants you to hear. It's what really happened in those final seconds. Who's pulling the strings in this alleged ref's heist? And could this controversy fracture the Fever forever? Stay tuned, because the truth is more scandalous than you can imagine. The night was charged with electricity long before the whistle blew. The Fever locker room buzzed with nervous energy as Stephanie White paced in circles, her brow furrowed beneath the glare of fluorescent lights. She'd laid out the game plan with surgical precision, stifled their star shooter, clogged the paint, pushed the pace. Yet beneath her calm exterior lurked a tidal wave of doubt. Months of rumors had gnawed at her confidence, rumors that league officials were manipulating calls to favor the Sparks, whispers that referees had been handpicked for their loyalty to certain franchises. As tip-off approached, the players gathered in a tight circle, hands stacked in the center. Lexi Hall closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer. Charisse Davis cracked her knuckles, determined to protect her teammates at all costs. Aaliyah Boston, towering above them all, offered a rare smile. "Let's show them what real grit looks like," she said, her voice steady. In that moment, the Fever felt invincibly young blood, fueled by a hunger for vindication. The game opened with a flurry of action. Mitchell sliced through the defense for a quick layup. Boston snagged an offensive rebound and powered back up. And White's defensive schemes locked down the Sparks' perimeter. The arena erupted, Fever faithful, roaring approval. But nearly every thunderous dunk or emphatic block was met with an inexplicable whistle. Harried refs hurried to the scorer's table, jotting down fouls that made no sense. Players stumbled over phantom contacts, clutching their hips or arms in disbelief. "I didn't even touch her," exclaimed Boston after a non-call visibly rattled her. The lead ref shrugged, chalking it up to interpretation. The stands fell silent, the crowd sensing something was wrong. Every phantom call chipped away at the Fever's rhythm, but their resolve only hardened. In the second quarter, Mitchell orchestrated a dazzling display of ball movement, threading needle-like passes through triple teams. Yet, as she launched a perfect three-pointer, a shrink-wrapped Spark defender flailed wildly and earned a free throw. The Fever bench exploded in outrage. Assistant coaches leaped from their seats, faces contorted with anger. Spectators pounded the rails, chanting, "Let them play." The Sparks sideline staff rubbed their hands together, seizing momentum as the refs seemed determined to give them every break. White's lips thinned to a line of steel. Her star guard looked to her for reassurance, and she offered a curt nod. Silence returned, but the tension was palpable. Halftime arrived like a welcome mercy. The Fever trudged to the locker room, jerseys clinging to their shoulders like weights. White slammed her playbook onto the bench, scattering papers in every direction. "This isn't basketball," she hissed, her voice low and dangerous. "It's a show, and we're not the stars." Players exchanged uneasy glances. No one had ever seen their coach so unguarded. In the hush, Mitchell slipped her phone onto speaker, replaying clips of dubious calls for everyone to see. Slow-motion replays highlighted phantom contacts that defied every law of physics. Throughout the break, rumors swept the arena like wildfire. Social media lit up with hashtags denouncing the refs, labeling them a paid theater troupe. Leaked audio from a supposed private referee briefing claimed they were instructed to protect the Sparks' marquee players, a damning accusation that could shatter the league's reputation. Fever players huddled around their phones, faces illuminated by scandalous texts. Some whispered of settlements and hush money of executives with hidden agendas. The third quarter began with fury. Boston, fueled by righteous indignation, bulldozed her way to the rim for back-to-back buckets. The arena trembled with each thunderous dunk, the floorboards rattling under the weight of expectation. Yet as she landed, the whistle pierced her. Roara phantom foul called on her for illegal use of hands. Her knee buckled, stunned, as she wiped away tears of frustration. Her teammates rushed to her side, their own cheeks wet with tears. White stormed onto the court, palms outstretched, imploring the refs to explain themselves. "Explain it," she demanded, voice echoing across the arena. The lead officials stared at her like she was an unruly schoolchild and whispered, "Control your bench." The insult cut deeper than any foul call. White's jaw clenched. She retreated to the sidelines, plotting her next move in the stands. Veteran Fever fans recounted every calamity in hushed tones. Mrs. Harrison, a septuagenarian who'd watched decades of Fever basketball, shook her head. "I've never seen anything like it," she muttered. Her grandson, barely a teenager, scrolled through the league's officiating stats, bemused by the glaring discrepancies. They snapped photos of the scoreboard and shared them online, mocking the absurdity of a game where fouls outnumbered possessions. By the fourth quarter, the Fever had clawed back from a double-digit deficit, an act of pure will. Mitchell drained a step-back jumper, Boston snatched a rebound over two defenders, and the bench leaped to its feet. Yet, at the game's most critical moment, Nicole Polston drove to the rim and absorbed a brutal collision, one that would draw a flagrant foul. In any pickup league, instead, the refs waved play on. The spike in adrenaline crashed into stunned silence as the Sparks pushed the ball up court and clinched victory with free throws. The final buzzer felt like a betrayal. Fever players crumpled to the hardwood, gasping for air and nursing bruises that never earned a whistle. White collapsed onto the scorer's table, head in hands, her anger eclipsed only by disbelief. Around her, the locker room fell into a hush, broken only by soft sobs and the scraping of chairs. Each player replayed the phantom calls in her mind, mourning not just a loss but the very integrity of their profession. Yet even in the depths of despair, Stephanie White's competitive fire burned bright. She gathered her team in a tight huddle, their uniforms stained with sweat and tears. "They may have stolen our win," she told them, voice trembling with emotion, "but they can't steal our pride. We know what really happened out there, and we'll make sure the world knows too." Her words ignited a spark of defiance in their eyes, forging a bond that transcended victory and defeat as they rose from their seats. Shoulders squared, a new determination coursed through their veins. The Sparks' celebration felt hollow now, overshadowed by the injustice they'd endured. Cameras in the tunnel poised to capture post-game reflections, broadcasting every furrowed brow and unshed tear. Reporters jostled for space, anticipating White's comments. But little did anyone suspect that her next words would shatter the veneer of civility that cloaked the highest levels of the league. As the team filed into the cramped press room, the air felt electric. Cameras swiveled, lights blazed, and microphones jostled for position. Stephanie White stood at the podium, shoulders squared, face unreadable under the harsh bulbs. The room fell silent, expectant. She inhaled deeply, then exhaled, and with a voice low yet unflinching declared, "We should have won." The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Reporters scribbled furiously, exchanging shocked glances. Analysts in the gallery whispered that never before had a coach openly questioned the league's integrity after a loss. Moments after the press conference, the Fever's group chat exploded. Texts pinged in rapid succession. "Did you hear that?" She finally said it. "This is going viral." Players huddled around their phones, faces alight with a mix of vindication and anxiety. Some worried about potential fines. Others celebrated the coach's bravery. Outside the arena, fans gathered under streetlights, chanting, "We should have won," back and forth like a mantra. It was no longer just a slogan. It was a rallying cry that united a fractured community. Backstage, Sparks staff scrambled to mount a defense. Team executives gathered in a glass-walled office overlooking the tunnel, debating whether to release a statement. One advisor argued for silence, warning that engaging would only fuel the fire. Another insisted on an apology, calling White's comments an unnecessary slight against hardworking officials. The general manager paced, rubbing his temples. "We can't let this slide," he muttered. "Our brand is on the line." Further down the hallway, the league's public relations team convened an emergency video conference. Faces grim as they weighed damage control strategies. Meanwhile, social media morphed into a war zone. Supporters of the Fever launched hashtag campaigns demanding a league investigation into officiating bias. Opponents accused the team of grandstanding and disrespect. Bleacher lounges turned into battlegrounds, with baristas overhearing heated debates over coffee orders. Local sports bars replaced gaudy highlights with endless loops of phantom foul compilations. Fans argued over whether the video of Lexi Hall's non-call deserved a player's apology or a rule change. Each clip seemed to add damning evidence, layering one injustice atop another. In the locker room the next morning, the temperature remained high. Stephanie entered to find her players reviewing highlight reels, dissecting every call. Shara said softly, "I can't believe they let her elbow Lexi fall and didn't call it." Lexi Hall nodded, her jaw tight. "We're getting mixed messages. League says they support us, but their whistles told another story." Rookie Savannah Martin, still wide-eyed from her first playoff-like atmosphere, whispered, "What do we do now?" White closed her eyes, then opened them wide. "We keep fighting," she said, "on the court, off the court, wherever it takes us." The following day brought more revelations. An anonymous referee sent emails to a prominent sports journalist, claiming that league executives had indeed conducted secret briefings before the game, emphasizing protection of marquee players on the opposing team. The emails included cryptic attachments, a screenshot of a memo with the phrase "limit interference" circled in red. The journalist's article went live at dawn, headlined "Inside the Whistleblower's Confession." Fever fans devoured it like gospel. Sparks supporters cried foul, accusing the journalist of fabricating evidence. The league issued a brief statement declaring the allegations unsubstantiated, further fueling speculation that they were covering up. Amid the chaos, personal stakes emerged. Reports surfaced that one of the referees scheduled for next season's finals had close ties to the Sparks organization, a former assistant coach. His career stalled until she accepted officiating. Players connected the dots: her rapid promotions, her refusal to recuse herself from key games, her penchant for phantom calls against underdog teams. The irony was unbearable. In closed-door league meetings, some officials quietly acknowledged the conflict, but none dared speak on record. One unnamed source sighed, "We all saw it, we all heard it, but we can't say it aloud." Off the court, the drama spilled into players' personal lives. Aaliyah Boston's mother, a retired referee herself, found herself defending phantom fouls at her book club meeting. "My daughter didn't foul anyone," she insisted, tears brimming. Neighbors raised eyebrows as Sparks fans ambled by, chanting, "Lock her up," referring to the official who'd whistled Boston into foul trouble. In contrast, Sparking ones felt vindicated when they recalled a time they'd been robbed by a different officiating crew. They cheered any pushback against officiating as just desserts. The community was riven into camps defined less by team colors than by suspicion of hidden agendas. Throughout all the pandemonium, Stephanie White became the face of defiance. Brands and sponsors approached her coach's wing, offering statements of support and merchandise partnerships featuring the phrase, "We should have won." She politely declined, worried that monetizing the controversy would cheapen the message. Instead, she launched a player-led initiative called Fair Play Forum, inviting athletes from around the league to discuss officiating transparency. The news sent ripples through the sports world. Critics questioned whether a coach crossing into governance was overreach, while supporters lauded her leadership as the season wore on. Every close call, every split-second whistle became fodder for debate. Fever games drew record viewership, partly thanks to the controversy that swirled like a cyclone. National broadcasters devoted segments to dissecting Stephanie's brave stance, and podcasts sprung up daily to reevaluate old footage. At halftime, during one nationally televised game, analysts replayed a no-call from weeks earlier, asking viewers to text in whether they agreed with the officials. The league's ratings soared, even as its credibility faltered. Yet beneath the spectacle lay a raw truth. The players still craved fairness, more than fame. In late-night team meetings, they logged hundreds of clips into a shared drive, hoping to compile indisputable proof. Charisse and Lexi spent hours in Stephanie's office, color-coding spreadsheet rows of fouls called and not called. Each data point felt like a brick in their case against injustice. Even veteran players who'd grown skeptical of activism found themselves swept up, channeling frustration into meticulous record-keeping. Off the court, an unlikely ally emerged. A former league official turned commentator who'd long been critical of his old employer. In a scathing op-ed, he wrote that the league's reluctance to address officiating bias was tearing at its foundation. When the most visible authority figure in a game publicly denounces your system, he argued, you've lost the people's trust. His words echoed around the sports world, cited by bloggers and journalists alike. Sparks executives bristled at the mounting pressure, yet could not offer a convincing rebuttal without opening the door to more scrutiny. In cities where the Fever had previously struggled to sell tickets, arenas began selling out weeks in advance. Fans dressed in custom t-shirts bearing text messages from Stephanie's group chat. Control your bench. We know what happened, we'll make the world know too. Tailgate parties erupted into forums, with fans poring over officiating manuals and debating rule interpretations. At one gathering, an elderly fan passed around printed copies of league policies, encouraging discussion of whether the referees were actually breaking written rules or simply exploiting vague guidelines. As news cameras tracked every development, the league found itself at a crossroads. Ignore the crisis and watch its integrity erode, or confront the issue head-on and risk exposing deeper fractures. Commissioners insisted behind closed doors that change was on the horizon, proposed transparency measures, independent review boards, even trial runs of automated foul detection. But for now, nothing was official. The uncertainty kept the story alive, like embers glowing in the dark, ready to flare up at any moment. And through it all, the Fever embodied resilience. Stephanie's team continued to fight on the court, accumulating wins despite the tide of questionable calls. Each victory felt like poetic justice, a testament to their grit and unity. But even in triumph, the shadow of injustice lingered. Every time the final buzzer sounded, the refrain echoed, "We should have won." It was no longer just a statement. A fact, it was a declaration of identity, a line in the sand drawn between those who demanded fairness and those content with business as usual. The following week dawned under a cloud of anticipation and unease. Fever players arrived at practice to find the gym pulsing with unfamiliar energy, reporters hovering by the entrance, camera crews setting up outside, and league officials slipping silently into empty seats. The organization had called a closed-door meeting, promising to address the officiating controversy head-on. Yet, as the team gathered in the film room, Their coach's warning echoed in their minds. Trust but verify. Stephanie. White stood before a wall-mounted screen displaying text message. Screenshots from her group chat. They'll try to placate us with talk, she warned, voice soft but urgent. We need evidence, not empty promises. She clicked a remote and the screen filled with side-by-side clips. A Sparks forward drawing a foul for a simple screen. Then a Fever player taking an identical hit and being whistled for aggression. The contrast was jarring. Players leaned forward, eyes scanning every pixel. The silence was heavy with shared indignation. Later that day, league representatives arrived, flanked by a handful of referees and a stern-faced mediator sent to quell the unrest. The room's tension was palpable as the commissioner's deputy offered a scripted apology. We hear your concerns and commit to reviewing the calls. Each word sounded hollow, rehearsed. Fever veterans exchanged skeptical glances. Trace Davis, usually reserved, rose to speak. We're not here for lip service, she said. We need transparency. Open up your system. Show us how calls are made. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. One referee, a veteran with salt and pepper hair, fidgeted in his seat. Finally, he cleared his throat. We have guidelines, he said. Interpretation is part of the job. We can't reveal every decision-making process. His words landed like a slap. Players felt their knees weaken. Natasha Howard's eyes narrowed as she pressed him. So, how do we know you're not following secret orders? The ref's gaze flicked to the mediator, who offered a tight-lipped shrug. The meeting dissolved into tense silence, the air thick with resentment. Outside, Sparks fans celebrated the league's tepid response as a victory for integrity, while Fever supporters felt betrayed. Social media erupted again, this time with fans demanding that games be replayed or that calls be overturned retroactively. Broadcasters speculated wildly about the legality of vacated wins, conjuring images of an unprecedented league do-over. Yet, amid the uproar, one unexpected player emerged. An investigative journalist from a leading sports network, who claimed to have uncovered audio recordings from a pre-game conference call among officials. That evening, the journalist released a bombshell segment. In dimly lit audio clips, referees discussed protecting brand value players and avoiding upset narratives. One voice cautioned, if we let the Fever win, we undermine the investment we've made in the Sparks' return to glory. The implications were seismic. Fever players gathered around a single phone, clutching each other as the voices crackled through the speaker. Tears mingled with rage as they heard proof of conspiracy. Meanwhile, tensions flared internally. Some players worried that continuing the fight would cost them dearly potential suspensions, fines, or even threats to their contracts. Others believed silence would be worse, a betrayal of their principles. Rookie Savannah Martin, who had once idolized the league's supposedly noble values, shook as she spoke. But if we go public with this, could it ruin our careers? Stephanie placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Sometimes fighting for what's right demands sacrifice, she said. Her words steadied Martin, forging her resolve. Across town, Sparks players confronted their own discomfort. Amid their celebrations, several admitted privately to unease over the controversy. Guard Kelsey Plum, whose elbow on Lexi Hall had gone unpunished, admitted she felt dirty about benefiting from one-sided officiating. In a private text thread, she wrote, I just wanted to play basketball, not be part of a heist. Though she never sent those messages, they circulated among insiders, fueling whispers of potential confessions. In the days that followed, civic protests even spilled into unexpected venues. At a downtown community center, a fair play forum, organized by Stephanie White, drew neighborhood residents, local politicians, and youth basketball coaches. They debated the ethics of officiating and questioned how sports bodies balance commercial interests with fairness. Children wearing Fever jerseys raised their hands to ask tough questions. Why does money matter more than truth? Their innocence? Cut through the scandal, reminding everyone of the stakes beyond wins and losses. As the media circus intensified, sponsors began to hedge their bets. Some put marketing campaigns on hold until the dust settled. One national brand paused its ad during Fever telecasts, citing brand protection as the reason. Teams noticed promotional events canceled, and players wondered whether their livelihoods might be collateral damage. In private, league executives scrambled to draft new statement templates. But each version felt more inadequate than the last. With every passing day, the Fever's resolve only hardened. In practice, White challenged her players to embrace the adversity. "Let the injustice fuel you," she urged. "Outwork them, outsmart them, prove you deserve to win even when the odds are stacked against you." And so the team drilled relentlessly. Fast breaks with convulsive intensity, defensive rotations sharper than ever. Free throw routines repeated until every muscle memorized the motion. Their bond, forged in controversy, became their greatest asset off the court. The story took a global turn when international sports networks picked up the leaked audio. Fans in Europe and Asia debated the drama, drawing parallels to political scandals and financial cover-ups. Some likened the league's behavior to corporate corruption, while others treated it as yet another example of elite sports' ugly underbelly. For the Fever, the narrative had outgrown the confines of a single game. It had become a symbol of resistance. In the arena ahead of the next home game, the Fever players walked through a gauntlet of supporters chanting, "Fair play now." Jumbo screens displayed fan-made compilations of infamous calls, and a choir of local students sang an anthem titled "Whistle's Whistle." The atmosphere brimmed with defiance, as if the entire city had united behind the team's cause. The players drew strength from the display, tears shining in their eyes as they prepared to take the court. Just before tip-off, a hush fell. Fever captain Lexi Hall raised her hand in a silent salute to the crowd, then turned to her teammates. "This is bigger than one game," she said. "Let's show them why we fight." As the ball was tossed, each player felt the weight of history pressing on her shoulders, every phantom foul still uncalled, every whispered order still echoing. But instead of cowering, they soared, determined to transform injustice into triumph and rewrite the narrative on their own terms. The arena buzzed like a live wire as the Fever players took the floor for what felt like the most important game of their lives. Every seat was filled, and deafening chants of fair play now rattled the rafters. The Jumbotron flashed messages of support, highlighting slogans like "We demand justice" and "Trust the process." Even the Sparks bench seemed momentarily unsettled by the intensity of the crowd. Lexi Hall, wearing a simple headband and a steely expression, glanced at Stephanie White, who offered a small nod of encouragement. This was their moment to prove that perseverance could overcome prejudice. Sharice Davis bounced the ball with controlled ferocity, each dribble echoing a vow to correct the wrongs of the past. Aaliyah Boston stretched, her eyes blazing with a mix of anticipation and defiance. The tip-off was a blur of motion. The ball swatted into the hands of Kelsey Mitchell, who immediately drove toward the hoop. The Sparks defenders collapsed on her, but she dished the ball to Boston in the post. She spun and released a smooth turnaround jumper that swished through the net. The crowd erupted, but before the cheers could die down, a whistle sliced through the roar. Boston whirled in surprise. Another phantom foul called for illegal use of elbow, though replay showed barely a breath of contact. Mutters of disbelief rippled across the arena. Stephanie barked from the sideline, "Come on, let them play." But the official merely jotted down the call. Instead of succumbing to frustration, the Fever used the injustice as fuel. Lexi dribbled past her defender, hesitated for a heartbeat, then launched a deep three that arced beautifully before dropping through the net. Fans leaped to their feet, shaking their signs and chanting in unison. Mitchell exploded down court, her sneakers squeaking like machine guns against the polished wood. She slammed her hand on the scorer's table as the Sparks called timeout. their coach's face etched with tension. In the huddle, Sparks coach Annika James hissed, "They're playing on another level. We need to dial it up or they'll bury us." Back on the court, the refs seemed determined to maintain the status quo. Each time a Sparks player drove aggressively, a whistle blew, awarding them free throws. But when the Fever retaliated with identical aggression, the whistle remained silent. It was an uneven battlefield, yet the Fever refused to flinch. Midway through the second quarter, Charisse intercepts a sloppy pass and races toward the basket. Her defender stumbles, tangling legs mid-stride, and Charisse soars for the layup. Crowd expects a whistle to nullify the play, but the ref hesitates, then signals N1. Pandemonium breaks loose as Charisse stamps her foot in victory earned in the face of doubt. She sinks the free throw with calm precision, her teammates erupting in celebration. From the stands, a fiery Sparks fan slams his fist on the rail. "How is that allowed?" he shouts to no one in particular. Beside him, a Fever supporter holds a homemade sign reading, "Earn your calls," causing the rival fan to sputter in frustration. These microcosms of conflict mirrored the larger drama unfolding on the court's every play, every call. A battleground for integrity. The halftime break arrived to a standing ovation. The Fever, trailing by a single point, headed to the locker room with heads held high. The Sparks slumped, fatigue creasing their brows. In the locker room, Stephanie addressed her team. "We've fought with heart. They've tried to break us with whistles, but look at how we fought back. Keep that fire burning. No matter what they call, we answer with play." She flicked on the screen, replaying Charisse's and 1 and Lexi's 3, reminders of their resilience. Players exchanged determined nods. Towels draped around their necks like banners of war. The third quarter opened with explosive energy. Lexi ripped down a rebound and streaked to half court, launching a no-look pass to Kelsey, who sank a smooth, mid-range jumper. The crowd howled approval. Sparks answered with a thunderous dunk, cutting the Fever's lead to a single point. Each bucket was followed by frantic scrutinizing of the officials, cameras zooming in on subtle reactions. One ref grimaced as if regretting a previous whistle. Another scratched his head before scribbling in his book. No one could deny the tension hanging in every call. Then came the defining moment. Aaliyah Boston caught a bounce pass on the low. Block pivoted past two defenders and rose for what should have been an unstoppable hook shot. As the ball soared, a Sparks defender swung an arm across Boston's midsection, disrupting her elevation. The ball bounced harmlessly off the backboard, but fans and players alike expected the whistle. Instead, the play was ruled no call, and play continued. An eruption of outrage broke out on the sidelines. White pounded the scorer's table. Players shouted at the refs, and fans rained boos down upon them. In contrast, moments later, a Sparks forward spun into Lexi Hall, grazing her shoulder on the drive. Without hesitation, the ref blew for a shooting foul. Sparks fans leaped from their seats in vindication, some punching the air. Fever players collapsed to the court, heads in hands, while the Sparks star calmly sank her free throws. The juxtaposition was stark, a rulebook applied by whim rather than principle. Inside the Fever huddle, voices trembled with a mix of anger and sorrow. Charisse's eyes glistened as she whispered, "I thought that was our moment." Stephanie wrapped an arm around her. "Our moment is still coming." That foul proves exactly why we're here, to show that integrity matters more than any scoreboard. Her words steadying, she drew up a play that would become etched in Fever lore. Out of the timeout, Lexi received the inbounds pass, backed down her defender with a subtle drop step, then swung the ball to Charisse in the corner. Charisse hesitated, then banked in a three that banked in off the glass. Pandemonium. The crowd's roar shook the rafters. The Sparks called timeout again, desperation etched on their faces. On the Jumbotron, a slow-motion replay of Charisse's bank shot was shown beside the phantom call on Boston, silent indictment of the ref's biases. The fourth quarter began with the Fever clinging to a slim 2-point lead. The Sparks came out ferociously, attacking the rim with renewed vigor. Every aggressive foray was met with whistles if directed at the Fever or silence if directed at them. Fever coach White tilted her head trying to catch the ref's eyes, but they remained outwardly unreadable. Sensing their vulnerability, Sparks launched a barrage of perimeter shots, connecting on back-to-back threes to seize a 4-point advantage. But the Fever spirit was unbroken. Kelsey Mitchell took charge, weaving through traffic and hitting pull-up jumpers. Lexi hauled in a monstrous offensive rebound and slammed it through the hoop, igniting a fresh wave of celebration. Aaliyah, despite foul trouble, checked back in with 5 minutes left, determined not to let phantom calls bench her. Her mere presence shifted the game's balance each time she set a pick. The arena seemed to hold its breath. With 90 seconds on the clock, the Fever trailed by 1. Lexi inbounded the ball to Kelsey, who dribbled behind the arc, faked a drive, then kicked it to Charisse in the corner. Charisse glanced at the basket, hesitation flickering across her face, then launched a high-arching 3. The ball hovered above the rim for agonizing seconds before dropping through. The crowd erupted in euphoria, but the celebration was cut short by the ref's whistle. Charisse was called for a lane violation, an obscure rule rarely enforced in the One Bus. Sparks fans cheered wildly. Fever supporters stared in stunned silence. The free throw split, sending the game into a tie. Time dwindled as both teams exchanged missed opportunities. With 10 seconds remaining, Sparks inbounded the ball. Fever executed a textbook trap, forcing a hurried cross-court pass. Lexi read it perfectly, intercepted the ball at half-court, and sprinted toward the rim. With 4 seconds left, she leaped for a layup. Mid-air, her path was cleaved by a Sparks defender's hip enough to disrupt her shot, but alleged to be incidental. The ball rimmed out and the buzzer sounded. Over time, in the exhausted, adrenaline-fueled hush, players from both teams exchanged weary nods, aware they'd just lived through a war. The refs, silent and inscrutable, gathered at midcourt. Fans chanted both "Let them play" and "Blow the whistle," their voices melding into a chaotic symphony. For the Fever, the battle was far from over. They'd survived an onslaught of bias calls and still stood undefeated in spirit. Overtime tipped off with an electric frenzy. Neither team held back. Every possession was a statement. Sparks defenders hacked Boston mercilessly, drawing whistles, if directed at her, but shrugged off when directed at them. Charisse and Kelsey combined for back-to-back threes, while Lexi's rebounding tenacity kept the Fever alive. On one play, Lexi dove for a loose ball, sliding across the court as if her life depended on it. She emerged with the ball, dirt-streaked, and roaring with triumph. With 30 seconds left, Fever led by 2. Sparks ran their final play, launching a contested 3 that clanged off the rim. Boston swooped in for the rebound, was immediately stripped, then dove for the loose ball. She rolled onto her back, clutching the ball to her chest as the final buzzer blared. The arena exploded in jubilation, despite every obstacle, despite every phantom call. The Fever had prevailed. Tears streamed down players' faces as they embraced at midcourt. Hall raised her hands to the sky, mouthing a silent thank you to the universe. Steam rose from their jerseys in the cool arena air. Fans flooded the court, chanting "Champions of Justice" as Sparks players walked off, heads bowed in grudging respect. The refs retreated quietly, their notebooks full of calls they'd made in service of something opaque. In the post-game press conference, Stephanie White spoke calmly, her voice steady despite exhaustion. "We fought harder than anyone," she said, "not just for a win, but for fairness. Tonight proves that when you stand up for truth, you can overcome anything." Her words resonated like gospel, inspiring nods of approval from journalists who once questioned her motives. As the Fever exited the arena, arms linked in solidarity, They carried with them more than a hard-fought victory. They bore the scars of a battle that transcended sport, a struggle for integrity in the face of institutional bias. And though the war was far from over, they had won the night, proving that courage and conviction can rewrite even the most lopsided rulebook. And so you've seen it all unfold. A team robbed of its rightful glory, a coach who dared to speak the hard truth, and a league caught in the crossfire of its own secrets. From phantom fouls to leaked memos, from social media uprisings to courtroom-style investigations, this saga has exposed the raw underbelly of professional basketball like never before. But the story doesn't end here. Will the WNBA finally hold its officials accountable? Can transparency measures restore faith in the game you love? Or will business interests continue to eclipse the spirit of fair play? Only time will tell, and we'll be watching every whistle, every replay, and every off-the-record email for you. If you're as fired up as we are, smash that like button to show your support for justice on the court. Hit subscribe to stay on top of every twist in this explosive controversy. And drop a comment below to let us know where you stand. Do you believe the Fever's fight will spark real change? Or is this just another head-turning scandal destined to be swept under the rug? Your voice matters. Join the conversation now.